Hello, my kindred souls tonight. I want to tell you something I've never quite said out loud. When I was a child, I used to think the Brothers Grimm were cruel. Their stories scared me. Children lost in forests, witches with eyes like embers, death waiting at the edge of a candle's flame. I remember closing the book one night, heart racing, and whispering to myself, why would anyone write something so sad for children? But years later, I think I finally understand. The Grimm tales were never meant to shield us from darkness. They were meant to teach us how to walk through it. Because the world, even now, is full of its own wolves and forests. And sometimes, the only way to survive is to remember that even in the cruelest story, there's always a spark, a child who doesn't give up, a kindness that outlasts the curse, a light that refuses to die. I think about Hansel and Gretel holding hands in the dark, choosing to keep going. I think about the fisherman's wife, realizing too late that what we demand from the world can break it, and the juniper tree, oh how it hurts, and yet how it sings. These stories don't lie to us. They show us that love, loss, greed, and forgiveness are all part of the same human thread. Maybe that's why I keep coming back to them, because when life feels cold or uncertain, I remember those small brave hearts wandering the woods, and somehow I feel less alone. So tonight, as the world grows quiet around you, take a breath. Let the dark outside be gentle. Picture the flicker of candlelight, the whisper of leaves against glass. The forest is near, but so is the fire. And just for a while, let's step together into the stories that remind us that even in shadow, the soul still glows. The Godfather Death. A poor man had 12 children and was forced to work night and day to give them even bread. When therefore the 13th came into the world, he knew not what to do in his trouble, but ran out into the great highway and resolved to ask the first person whom he met to be godfather. The first to meet him was the good God who already knew what filled his heart, and said to him, "Poor man, I pity thee. I will hold thy child at its christening, and will take charge of it, and make it happy on earth." The man said, "Who art thou?" "I am God." "Then I do not desire to have thee for a godfather," said the man. "Thou givest to the rich, and leavest the poor to hunger." Thus spoke the man, for he did not know how wisely God apportions riches and poverty. He turned therefore away from the Lord, and went farther. Then the devil came to him and said, "What seekest thou? If thou wilt take me as a godfather for thy child, I will give him gold in plenty, and all the joys of the world as well." The man asked, "Who art thou?" "I am the devil." "Then I do not desire to have thee for godfather," said the man. "Thou deceivest men and leadest them astray." He went onwards, and then came Death striding up to him with withered legs, and said, "Take me as godfather." The man asked, "Who art thou?" "I am Death, and I make all equal." Then said the man, "Thou art the right one. Thou takest the rich as well as the poor, without distinction. Thou shalt be godfather." Death answered, "I will make thy child rich and famous, for he who has me for a friend can lack nothing." The man said, "Next Sunday is the christening. Be there at the right time." Death appeared as he had promised, and stood godfather quite in the usual way. When the boy had grown up, his godfather one day appeared and bade him go with him. He led him forth into a forest, and showed him a herb which grew there, and said, "Now shalt thou receive thy godfather's present. I make thee a celebrated physician. When thou art called to a patient, I will always appear to thee. If I stand by the head of the sick man, thou mayest say with confidence that thou wilt make him well again, and if thou givest him of this herb, he will recover. But if I stand by the patient's feet, he is mine, and thou must say that all remedies are in vain, and that no physician in the world could save him. But beware of using the herb against my will, or it might fare ill with thee." It was not long before the youth was the most famous physician in the whole world. He had only to look at the patient, and he knew his condition at once, and if he would recover, or must needs die. So they said of him, and from far and wide people came to him, sent for him when they had anyone ill, and gave him so much money that he soon became a rich man. Now it so befell that the king became ill, and the physician was summoned. and was to say if recovery were possible. But when he came to the bed, death was standing by the feet of the sick man, and the herb did not grow which could save him. If I could but cheat death for once, thought the physician, he is sure to take it ill if I do, but, as I am his godson, he will shut one eye. I will risk it. He therefore took up the sick man, and laid him the other way, so that now death was standing by his head. Then he gave the king some of the herb, and he recovered, and grew healthy again. But death came to the physician, looking very black and angry, threatened him with his finger, and said, "Thou hast overreached me. This time I will pardon it, as thou art my godson. But if thou venturest it again, it will cost thee thy neck, for I will take thee thyself away with me." Soon afterwards the king's daughter fell into a severe illness. She was his only child, and he wept day and night, so that he began to lose the sight of his eyes, and he caused it to be made known that whosoever rescued her from death should be her husband and inherit the crown. When the physician came to the sick girl's bed, he saw death by her feet. He ought to have remembered the warning given by his godfather, but he was so infatuated by the great beauty of the king's daughter and the happiness of becoming her husband that he flung all thought to the winds. He did not see that death was casting angry glances on him, that he was raising his hand in the air and threatening him with his withered fist. He raised up the sick girl and placed her head where her feet had lain. Then he gave her some of the herb, and instantly her cheeks flushed red, and life stirred afresh in her. When Death saw that for a second time he was defrauded of his own property, he walked up to the physician with long strides and said, "All is over with thee, and now the lot falls on thee," and seized him so firmly with his ice-cold hand that he could not resist, and led him into a cave below the earth. There he saw how thousands and thousands of candles were burning in countless rows, some large, others half-sized, others small. Every instant some were extinguished, and others again burnt up, so that the flames seemed to leap hither and thither in perpetual change. "See," said Death, "these are the lights of men's lives. The large ones belong to children, the half-sized ones to married people in their prime, the little ones belong to old people, but children and young folks likewise have often only a tiny candle. Show me the light of my life," said the physician, and he thought that it would be still very tall. Death pointed to a little end which was just threatening to go out, and said, "Behold, it is there." "Ah, dear godfather," said the horrified physician, "light a new one for me. Do it for love of me, that I may enjoy my life, be king, and the husband of the king's beautiful daughter." "I cannot," answered Death. "One must go out before a new one is lighted. Then place the old one on a new one. That will go on burning at once when the old one has come to an end," pleaded the physician. Death behaved as if he were going to fulfill his wish, and took hold of a tall new candle, but as he desired to revenge himself, he purposely made a mistake in fixing it, and the little piece fell down and was extinguished. Immediately the physician fell on the ground, and now he himself was in the hands of Death. The fisherman and his wife. There was once on a time a fisherman who lived with his wife in a miserable hovel close by the sea, and every day he went out fishing. And once as he was sitting with his rod, looking at the clear water, his line suddenly went down, far down below, and when he drew it up again, he brought out a large flounder. Then the flounder said to him, "Hark, you fisherman, I pray you, let me live. I am no flounder really, but an enchanted prince. What good will it do you to kill me? I should not be good to eat. Put me in the water again and let me go." "Come," said the fisherman. "There is no need for so many words about it. A fish that can talk I should certainly let go anyhow." With that he put him back again into the clear water, and the flounder went to the bottom, leaving a long streak of blood behind him. Then the fisherman got up and went home to his wife in the hovel. "Husband," said the woman, "have you caught nothing today?" "No," said the man, "I did catch a flounder, who said he was an enchanted prince, so I let him go again." "Did you not wish for anything first?" said the woman. "No," said the man. "What should I wish for?" "Ah," said the woman, "it is surely hard to have to live always in this dirty hovel. You might have wished for a small cottage for us." Go back and call him. Tell him we want to have a small cottage. He will certainly give us that." "Ah," said the man. "Why should I go there again?" "Why," said the woman. "You did catch him, and you let him go again. He is sure to do it. Go at once." The man still did not quite like to go, but did not like to oppose his wife, and went to the sea. When he got there, the sea was all green and yellow, and no longer so smooth. So he stood still and said, "Flounder, flounder in the sea, come, I pray thee, here to me, for my wife, good Ilsebil, wills not as I'd have her will." Then the flounder came swimming to him and said, "Well, what does she want then?" "Ah," said the man, "I did catch you, and my wife says I really ought to have wished for something. She does not like to live in a wretched hovel any longer. She would like to have a cottage." "Go then," said the flounder. "She has it already." When the man went home, his wife was no longer in the hovel, but instead of it, there stood a small cottage, and she was sitting on a bench before the door. Then she took him by the hand and said to him, "Just come inside. Look, now, isn't this a great deal better?" So they went in, and there was a small porch, and a pretty little parlour and bedroom, and a kitchen and pantry, with the best of furniture, and fitted up with the most beautiful things made of tin and brass, whatsoever was wanted. And behind the cottage there was a small yard, with hens and ducks, and a little garden with flowers and fruit. "Look," said the wife, "is not that nice?" "Yes," said the husband, "and so we must always think it. Now we will live quite contented." "We will think about that," said the wife. With that they ate something and went to bed. Everything went well for a week or a fortnight, and then the woman said, "Hark you, husband, this cottage is far too small for us, and the garden and yard are little. The flounder might just as well have given us a larger house. I should like to live in a great stone castle. Go to the flounder and tell him to give us a castle." "Ah, wife," said the man, "the cottage is quite good enough. Why should we live in a castle?" "What?" said the woman. "Just go there, the flounder can always do that." "No, wife," said the man. "The flounder has just given us the cottage. I do not like to go back so soon. It might make him angry." "Go," said the woman. "He can do it quite easily, and will be glad to do it. Just you go to him." The man's heart grew heavy, and he would not go. He said to himself, "It is not right," and yet he went. And when he came to the sea, the water was quite purple and dark blue, and grey and thick, and no longer so green and yellow, but it was still quiet. And he stood there and said, "Flounder, flounder in the sea, come, I pray thee, here to me, for my wife, good Ilsebil, wills not as I'd have her will." "Well, what does she want then?" said the flounder. "Alas," said the man, half scared, "she wants to live in a great stone castle." "Go to it then. She is standing before the door," said the flounder. Then the man went away, intending to go home, but when he got there, he found a great stone palace, and his wife was just standing on the steps going in, and she took him by the hand and said, "Come in." So he went in with her, and in the castle was a great hall paved with marble, and many servants, who flung wide the doors, and the walls were all bright with beautiful hangings. And in the rooms were chairs and tables of pure gold, and crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and all the rooms and bedrooms had carpets, and food and wine of the very best were standing on all the tables, so that they nearly broke down beneath it. Behind the house too there was a great courtyard, with stables for horses and cows, and the very best of carriages. There was a magnificent large garden too, with the most beautiful flowers and fruit trees, and a park quite half a mile long, in which were stags, deer and hares, and everything that could be desired. "Come," said the woman. "Isn't that beautiful?" "Yes, indeed," said the man. "Now let it be, and we will live in this beautiful castle and be content." "We will consider about that," said the woman, "and sleep upon it." Thereupon they went to bed. Next morning the wife awoke first, and it was just daybreak, and from her bed she saw the beautiful country lying before her. Her husband was still stretching himself, so she poked him in the side with her elbow and said, "Get up, husband, and just peep out of the window. Look you, couldn't we be the king over all that land? Go to the flounder, We will be the king." "Ah, wife," said the man, "why should we be king? I do not want to be king." "Well," said the wife, "if you won't be king, I will. Go to the flounder, for I will be king." "Ah, wife," said the man, "why do you want to be king? I do not like to say that to him." "Why not?" said the woman. "Go to him this instant. I must be king." So the man went, and was quite unhappy, because his wife wished to be king. "It is not right. It is not right," thought he. He did not wish to go, but yet he went. And when he came to the sea, it was quite dark grey, and the water heaved up from below, and smelt putrid. Then he went and stood by it, and said, "Flounder, flounder in the sea, come, I pray thee, here to me, for my wife, good Ilsebil, wills not as I'd have her will." "Well, what does she want then?" said the flounder. "Alas," said the man, "she wants to be king. Go to her, she is king already." "Aye." So the man went, and when he came to the palace, the castle had become much larger, and had a great tower and magnificent ornaments, and the sentinel was standing before the door, and there were numbers of soldiers with kettle drums and trumpets. And when he went inside the house, everything was of real marble and gold, with velvet covers and great golden tassels. Then the doors of the hall were opened, and there was the court in all its splendor, and his wife was sitting on a high throne of gold and diamonds, with a great crown of gold on her head, and a scepter of pure gold and jewels in her hand, and on both sides of her stood her maids in waiting in a row, each of them always one head shorter than the last. Then he went and stood before her, and said, "Ah, wife, and now you are king." "Yes," said the woman, "now I am king." So he stood and looked at her, and when he had looked at her thus for some time, he said, "And now that you are king, let all else be. Now we will wish for nothing more." "Nay, husband," said the woman, quite anxiously, "I find time pass very heavily. I can bear it no longer. Go to the flounder, I am king, but I must be emperor, too." "Alas, wife, why do you wish to be emperor?" "Husband," said she, "go to the flounder, I will be emperor." "Alas, wife," said the man, "he cannot make you emperor. I may not say that to the fish. There is only one emperor in the land. An emperor the flounder cannot make you. I assure you, he cannot." "What?" said the woman. "I am the king, and you are nothing but my husband. Will you go this moment? Go at once. If he can make a king, he can make an emperor. I will be emperor. Go instantly." So he was forced to go. As the man went, however, he was troubled in mind, and thought to himself, "It will not end well. It will not end well. Emperor is too shameless. The flounder will at last be tired out." With that he reached the sea, and the sea was quite black and thick, and began to boil up from below, so that it threw up bubbles, and such a sharp wind blew over it that it curdled, and the man was afraid. Then he went and stood by it, and said, "Flounder, flounder in the sea, come, I pray thee, here to me, for my wife, good Ilsabel, wills not as I'd have her will." "Well, what does she want then?" said the flounder. "Alas, flounder," said he, "my wife wants to be emperor." "Go to her," said the flounder. "She is emperor already." "Oh." So the man went, and when he got there, the whole palace was made of polished marble with alabaster figures and golden ornaments, and soldiers were marching before the door blowing trumpets and beating cymbals and drums, and in the house barons and counts and dukes were going about as servants. Then they opened the doors to him which were of pure gold, and when he entered, there sat his wife on a throne, which was made of one piece of gold, and was quite 2 miles high, and she wore a great golden crown that was 3 yards high, and set with diamonds and carbuncles, and in one hand she had the scepter, and in the other the imperial orb, and on both sides of her stood the yeomen of the guard in 2 rows, each being smaller than the one before him, from the biggest giant, who was 2 miles high, to the very smallest dwarf, just as big as my little finger, and before it stood a number of princes and dukes. Then the man went and stood among them, and said, "Wife, are you emperor now?" "Yes," said she, "now I am emperor." Then he stood and looked at her well, and when he had looked at her thus for some time, he said, "Ah, wife, be content, now that you are emperor." "Husband," said she, "why are you standing there? Now I am emperor, but I will be pope too. Go to the flounder." "Alas, wife," said the man, "what will you not wish for? You cannot be pope. There is but one in Christendom. He cannot make you pope." "Husband," said she, "I will be pope. Go immediately. I must be pope this very day." "No, wife," said the man. "I do not like to say that to him. That would not do. It is too much. The flounder can't make you pope." "Husband," said she, "what nonsense. If he can make an emperor, he can make a pope. Go to him directly. I am emperor, and you are nothing but my husband. Will you go at once?" Then he was afraid and went, but he was quite faint, and shivered and shook, and his knees and legs trembled. And a high wind blew over the land, and the clouds flew, and towards evening all grew dark, and the leaves fell from the trees, and the water rose and roared as if it were boiling, and splashed upon the shore. And in the distance he saw ships which were firing guns in their sore need, pitching and tossing on the waves. And yet in the midst of the sky there was still a small bit of blue, though on every side it was as red as in a heavy storm. So, full of despair, he went and stood in much fear, and said, "Flounder, flounder in the sea, come, I pray thee, here to me, for my wife, good Ilsebil, wills not as I'd have her will." "Well, what does she want then?" said the flounder. "Alas," said the man, "she wants to be pope." "Go to her then," said the flounder. "She is pope already." So he went, and when he got there he saw what seemed to be a large church surrounded by palaces. He pushed his way through the crowd. Inside, however, everything was lighted up with thousands and thousands of candles, and his wife was clad in gold, and she was sitting on a much higher throne, and had 3 great golden crowns on, and round about her there was much ecclesiastical splendor, and on both sides of her was a row of candles, the largest of which was as tall as the very tallest tower, down to the very smallest kitchen candle, and all the emperors and kings were on their knees before her, kissing her shoe. "Wife," said the man, and looked attentively at her, "are you now pope?" "Yes," said she, "I am pope." So he stood and looked at her, and it was just as if he was looking at the bright Sunday. When he had stood looking at her thus for a short time, he said, "Ah, wife, if you are pope, do let well alone." But she looked as stiff as a post, and did not move or show any signs of life. Then said he, "Wife, now that you are pope, be satisfied. You cannot become anything greater now." "I will consider about that," said the woman. Thereupon they both went to bed, but she was not satisfied, and greediness let her have no sleep, for she was continually thinking what there was left for her to be. The man slept well and soundly, for he had run about a great deal during the day, but the woman could not fall asleep at all, and flung herself from one side to the other the whole night through, thinking always what more was left for her to be, but unable to call to mind anything else. At length the sun began to rise, and when the woman saw the red of dawn, she sat up in bed and looked at it. And when, through the window, she saw the sun thus rising, she said, "Cannot I, too, order the sun and moon to rise?" "Husband," she said, poking him in the ribs with her elbows, "wake up, go to the flounder, for I wish to be even as God is." The man was still half asleep, but he was so horrified that he fell out of bed. He thought he must have heard amiss, and rubbed his eyes, and said, "Alas, wife, what are you saying?" "Husband," said she, "if I can't order the sun and moon to rise, and have to look on and see the sun and moon rising, I can't bear it. I shall not know what it is to have another happy hour, unless I can make them rise myself." Then she looked at him so terribly that a shudder ran over him, and said, "Go at once. I wish to be like unto God." "Alas, wife," said the man, falling on his knees before her, "the flounder cannot do that. He can make an emperor and a pope. I beseech you, go on as you are, and be pope." Then she fell into a rage, and her hair flew wildly about her head, and she cried, "I will not endure this. I'll not bear it any longer. Wilt thou go?" Then he put on his trousers and ran away like a madman. But outside a great storm was raging and blowing so hard that he could scarcely keep his feet. Houses and trees toppled over. The mountains trembled. Rocks rolled into the sea. The sky was pitch black, and it thundered and lightened, and the sea came in with black waves as high as church towers and mountains, and all with crests of white foam at the top. Then he cried, but could not hear his own words. "Flounder, flounder in the sea, come, I pray thee, here to me, for my wife, good Ilsebil, wills not as I'd have her will." "Well, what does she want then?" said the flounder. "Alas," said he, "she wants to be like unto God. Go to her, and you will find her back again in the dirty hovel. And there they are, living still at this very time. Rumpelstiltskin. Once there was a miller who was poor, but who had a beautiful daughter. Now it happened that he had to go and speak to the king, and in order to make himself appear important, he said to him, 'I have a daughter who can spin straw into gold.' The king said to the miller, 'That is an art which pleases me well. If your daughter is as clever as you say, bring her tomorrow to my palace, and I will try what she can do.' And when the girl was brought to him, he took her into a room which was quite full of straw, gave her a spinning wheel and a reel, and said, 'Now set to work, and if by tomorrow morning early you have not spun this straw into gold during the night, you must die.' Thereupon he himself locked up the room, and left her in it alone. So there sat the poor miller's daughter, and for the life of her could not tell what to do. She had no idea how straw could be spun into gold, and she grew more and more miserable, until at last she began to weep. But all at once the door opened, and in came a little man, and said, 'Good evening, Mistress Miller. Why are you crying so?' 'Alas,' answered the girl, 'I have to spin straw into gold, and I do not know how to do it.' 'What will you give me,' said the mannequin, 'if I do it for you?' 'My necklace,' said the girl. The little man took the necklace, seated himself in front of the wheel, and whir, 3 turns, and the reel was full. Then he put another on, and whir, 3 times round, and the second was full too. And so it went on until the morning, when all the straw was spun, and all the reels were full of gold. By daybreak the king was already there, and when he saw the gold he was astonished and delighted, but his heart became only more greedy. He had the miller's daughter taken into another room full of straw, which was much larger, and commanded her to spin that also in one night if she valued her life. The girl knew not how to help herself, and was crying, when the door again opened, and the little man appeared, and said, 'What will you give me if I spin that straw into gold for you?' 'The ring on my finger,' answered the girl. The little man took the ring, again began to turn the wheel, and by morning had spun all the straw into glittering gold. The king rejoiced beyond measure at the sight, but still he had not gold enough, and he had the miller's daughter taken into a still larger room full of straw, and said, 'You must spin this too, in the course of this night, but if you succeed, you shall be my wife.' 'Even if she be a miller's daughter,' thought he, 'I could not find a richer wife in the whole world.' When the girl was alone, the mannequin came again for the 3rd time, and said, 'What will you give me if I spin the straw for you this time also?' 'I have nothing left that I could give,' answered the girl. 'Then promise me, if you should become queen, your first child, who knows whether that will ever happen,' thought the miller's daughter, and, not knowing how else to help herself in this strait, she promised the mannequin what he wanted, and for that he once more span the straw into gold. And when the king came in the morning, and found all as he had wished, he took her in marriage, and the pretty miller's daughter became a queen. A year after, she had a beautiful child, and she never gave a thought to the mannequin. But suddenly he came into her room and said, 'Now give me what you promised.' The queen was horror-struck, and offered the mannequin all the riches of the kingdom if he would leave her the child. But the mannequin said, 'No, something that is living is dearer to me than all the treasures in the world.' Then the queen began to weep and cry, so that the mannequin pitied her. 'I will give you 3 days' time,' said he, If by that time you find out my name, then shall you keep your child." So the queen thought the whole night of all the names that she had ever heard, and she sent a messenger over the country to inquire, far and wide, for any other names that there might be. When the mannequin came the next day, she began with Caspar, Melchior, Balthazar, and said all the names she knew, one after another. But to everyone the little man said, "That is not my name." On the second day she had inquiries made in the neighborhood as to the names of the people there, and she repeated to the mannequin the most uncommon and curious. "Perhaps your name is Shortribs, or Sheepshanks, or Laceleg." But he always answered, "That is not my name." On the third day the messenger came back again and said, "I have not been able to find a single new name, but as I came to a high mountain at the end of the forest, where the fox and the hare bid each other good night, there I saw a little house, and before the house a fire was burning, and round about the fire quite a ridiculous little man was jumping. He hopped upon one leg and shouted, 'Today I bake, tomorrow brew. The next I'll have the young queen's child. Her, glad am I that no one knew. That Rumpelstiltskin I am styled.' You may think how glad the queen was when she heard the name, and when soon afterwards the little man came in and asked, 'Now, Mistress Queen, what is my name?' At first she said, 'Is your name Conrad?' 'No.' 'Is your name Harry?' 'No.' 'Perhaps your name is Rumpelstiltskin.' 'The devil has told you that. The devil has told you that,' cried the little man, and in his anger he plunged his right foot so deep into the earth that his whole leg went in, and then in rage he pulled at his left leg so hard with both hands that he tore himself in two. Hansel and Gretel. Hard by a great forest dwelt a poor woodcutter with his wife and his 2 children. The boy was called Hansel, and the girl Gretel. He had little to bite and to break, and once when great scarcity fell on the land, he could no longer procure daily bread. Now when he thought over this by night in his bed, and tossed about in his anxiety, he groaned and said to his wife, "What is to become of us? How are we to feed our poor children, when we no longer have anything even for ourselves?" "I'll tell you what, husband," answered the woman. "Early tomorrow morning we will take the children out into the forest to where it is the thickest. There we will light a fire for them, and give each of them 1 piece of bread more, and then we will go to our work and leave them alone. They will not find the way home again, and we shall be rid of them." "No, wife," said the man, "I will not do that. How can I bear to leave my children alone in the forest? The wild animals would soon come and tear them to pieces." "O thou fool," said she, "then we must all 4 die of hunger. Thou mayest as well plane the planks for our coffins." And she left him no peace until he consented. "But I feel very sorry for the poor children all the same," said the man. The 2 children had also not been able to sleep for hunger, and had heard what their stepmother had said to their father. Gretel wept bitter tears, and said to Hansel, "Now all is over with us." "Be quiet, Gretel," said Hansel. "Do not distress thyself. I will soon find a way to help us." And when the old folks had fallen asleep, he got up, put on his little coat, opened the door below, and crept outside.
The moon shone brightly, and the white pebbles which lay in front of the house glittered like real silver pennies. Hansel stooped and put as many of them in the little pocket of his coat as he could possibly get in. Then he went back and said to Gretel, "Be comforted, dear little sister, and sleep in peace. God will not forsake us." And he lay down again in his bed. When day dawned, but before the sun had risen, the woman came and awoke the 2 children, saying, "Get up, you sluggards. We are going into the forest to fetch wood." She gave each a little piece of bread and said, "There is something for your dinner, but do not eat it up before then, for you will get nothing else." Gretel took the bread under her apron, as Hansel had the stones in his pocket. Then they all set out together on the way to the forest. When they had walked a short time, Hansel stood still and peeped back at the house, and did so again and again. His father said, "Hansel, what art thou looking at there and staying behind for? Mind what thou art about." and do not forget how to use thy legs." "Ah, father," said Hansel, "I am looking at my little white cat, which is sitting up on the roof, and wants to say goodbye to me." The wife said, "Fool, that is not thy little cat. That is the morning sun, which is shining on the chimneys." Hansel, however, had not been looking back at the cat, but had been constantly throwing one of the white pebble stones out of his pocket on the road. When they had reached the middle of the forest, the father said, "Now, children, pile up some wood, and I will light a fire that you may not be cold." Hansel and Gretel gathered brushwood together, as high as a little hill. The brushwood was lighted, and when the flames were burning very high, the woman said, "Now, children, lay yourselves down by the fire and rest. We will go into the forest and cut some wood. When we have done, we will come back and fetch you away." Hansel and Gretel sat by the fire, and when noon came, each ate a little piece of bread, and as they heard the strokes of the wood axe, they believed that their father was near. It was not, however, the axe. It was a branch which he had fastened to a withered tree, which the wind was blowing backwards and forwards. And as they had been sitting such a long time, their eyes shut with fatigue, and they fell fast asleep. When at last they awoke, it was already dark night. Gretel began to cry and said, "How are we to get out of the forest now?" But Hansel comforted her and said, "Just wait a little, until the moon has risen, and then we will soon find the way." And when the full moon had risen, Hansel took his little sister by the hand and followed the pebbles which shone like newly coined silver pieces and showed them the way. They walked the whole night long, and by break of day came once more to their father's house. They knocked at the door, and when the woman opened it and saw that it was Hansel and Gretel, she said, "You naughty children, why have you slept so long in the forest? We thought you were never coming back at all." The father, however, rejoiced, for it had cut him to the heart to leave them behind alone. Not long afterwards, there was once more great scarcity in all parts, and the children heard their mother saying at night to their father, "Everything is eaten again. We have 1/2 loaf left, and after that there is an end. The children must go. We will take them farther into the wood, so that they will not find their way out again. There is no other means of saving ourselves." The man's heart was heavy, and he thought, "It would be better for thee to share the last mouthful with thy children." The woman, however, would listen to nothing that he had to say, but scolded and reproached him. He who says A must say B likewise, and as he had yielded the first time, he had to do so a second time also. The children were, however, still awake, and had heard the conversation. When the old folks were asleep, Hansel again got up, and wanted to go out and pick up pebbles as he had done before, but the woman had locked the door, and Hansel could not get out. Nevertheless, he comforted his little sister and said, "Do not cry, Gretel. Go to sleep quietly. The good God will help us." Early in the morning came the woman, and took the children out of their beds. Their bit of bread was given to them, but it was still smaller than the time before. On the way into the forest, Hansel crumbled his in his pocket, and often stood still, and threw a morsel on the ground. "Hansel, why dost thou stop and look round?" said the father. "Go on." "I'm looking back at my little pigeon which is sitting on the roof and wants to say goodbye to me," answered Hansel. "Simpleton," said the woman, "that is not thy little pigeon. That is the morning sun that is shining on the chimney." Hansel, however, little by little, threw all the crumbs on the path. The woman led the children still deeper into the forest, where they had never in their lives been before. Then a great fire was again made, and the mother said, "Just sit there, you children, and when you are tired, you may sleep a little. We are going into the forest to cut wood, and in the evening when we are done, we will come and fetch you away." When it was noon, Gretel shared her piece of bread with Hansel, who had scattered his by the way. Then they fell asleep, and evening came and went, but no one came to the poor children. They did not awake until it was dark night, and Hansel comforted his little sister and said, "Just wait, Gretel, until the moon rises, and then we shall see the crumbs of bread which I have strewn about. They will show us our way home again." When the moon came, they set out, but they found no crumbs, for the many thousands of birds which fly about in the woods and fields had picked them all up. Hansel said to Gretel, "We shall soon find the way." But they did not find it. They walked the whole night and all the next day too, from morning till evening. But they did not get out of the forest, and were very hungry, for they had nothing to eat but 2 or 3 berries, which grew on the ground. And as they were so weary that their legs would carry them no longer, they lay down beneath a tree and fell asleep. It was now 3 mornings since they had left their father's house. They began to walk again, but they always got deeper into the forest, and if help did not come soon, they must die of hunger and weariness. When it was midday, they saw a beautiful snow-white bird sitting on a bough, which sang so delightfully that they stood still and listened to it. And when it had finished its song, it spread its wings and flew away before them, and they followed it until they reached a little house, on the roof of which it alighted. And when they came quite up to Little House, they saw that it was built of bread and covered with cakes, but that the windows were of clear sugar. "We will set to work on that," said Hansel, "and have a good meal. I will eat a bit of the roof, and thou, Gretel, canst eat some of the window. It will taste sweet." Hansel reached up above and broke off a little of the roof to try how it tasted, and Gretel leaned against the window and nibbled at the panes. Then a soft voice cried from the room, "Nibble, nibble, no. Who is nibbling at my little house?" The children answered, "The wind, the wind, the heaven-born wind," and went on eating without disturbing themselves. Hansel, who thought the roof tasted very nice, tore down a great piece of it, and Gretel pushed out the whole of one round window pane, sat down, and enjoyed herself with it. Suddenly the door opened, and a very, very old woman, who supported herself on crutches, came creeping out. Hansel and Gretel were so terribly frightened that they let fall what they had in their hands. The old woman, however, nodded her head and said, "Oh, you dear children, who has brought you here? Do come in and stay with me. No harm shall happen to you." She took them both by the hand and led them into her little house. Then good food was set before them, milk and pancakes, with sugar, apples, and nuts. Afterwards, 2 pretty little beds were covered with clean white linen, and Hansel and Gretel lay down in them and thought they were in heaven. The old woman had only pretended to be so kind. She was in reality a wicked witch who lay in wait for children and had only built the little house of bread in order to entice them there. When a child fell into her power, she killed it, cooked, and ate it, and that was a feast day with her. Witches have red eyes and cannot see far, but they have a keen scent like the beasts, and are aware when human beings draw near. When Hansel and Gretel came into her neighborhood, she laughed maliciously and said mockingly, "I have them. They shall not escape me again." Early in the morning, before the children were awake, she was already up, and when she saw both of them sleeping and looking so pretty with their plump red cheeks, she muttered to herself, "That will be a dainty mouthful." Then she seized Hansel with her shriveled hand, carried him into a little stable, and shut him in with a grated door. He might scream as he liked. That was of no use. Then she went to Gretel, shook her till she awoke, and cried, "Get up, lazy thing. Fetch some water and cook something good for thy brother. He is in the stable outside, and is to be made fat. When he is fat, I will eat him." Gretel began to weep bitterly, but it was all in vain. She was forced to do what the wicked witch ordered her. And now the best food was cooked for poor Hansel, but Gretel got nothing but crab shells. Every morning the woman crept to the little stable and cried, "Hansel, stretch out thy finger, that I may feel if thou wilt soon be fat." Hansel, however, stretched out a little bone to her, and the old woman, who had dim eyes, could not see it, and thought it was Hansel's finger, and was astonished that there was no way of fattening him. When 4 weeks had gone by, and Hansel still continued thin, she was seized with impatience and would not wait any longer. "Hola, Gretel," she cried to the girl. "Be active and bring some water. Let Hansel be fat or lean. Tomorrow I will kill him and cook him." Ah, how the poor little sister did lament when she had to fetch the water, and how her tears did flow down over her cheeks. "Dear God, do help us," she cried. "If the wild beasts in the forest had but devoured us, we should at any rate have died together." "Just keep thy noise to thyself," said the old woman. "All that won't help thee at all." End of flick. Early in the morning, Gretel had to go out and hang up the cauldron with the water and light the fire. "We will bake first," said the old woman. "I have already heated the oven and kneaded the dough." She pushed poor Gretel out to the oven, from which flames of fire were already darting. "Creep in," said the witch, "and see if it is properly heated, so that we can shut the bread in." And when once Gretel was inside, she intended to shut the oven and let her bake in it, and then she would eat her too. But Gretel saw what she had in her mind, and said, "I do not know how I am to do it. How do you get in?" "Silly goose," said the old woman. "The door is big enough. Just look. I can get in myself." And she crept up and thrust her head into the oven. Then Gretel gave her a push that drove her far into it, and shut the iron door, and fastened the bolt. Oh, then she began to howl quite horribly, but Gretel ran away, and the godless witch was miserably burnt to death. Gretel, however, ran like lightning to Hansel, opened his little stable and cried, "Hansel, we are saved. The old witch is dead." Then Hansel sprang out like a bird from its cage when the door is opened for it. How they did rejoice and embrace each other, and dance about and kiss each other. And as they had no longer any need to fear her, they went into the witch's house, and in every corner there stood chests full of pearls and jewels. "These are far better than pebbles," said Hansel, and thrust into his pockets whatever could be got in. And Gretel said, "I too will take something home with me," and filled her pinafore full. "But now we will go away," said Hansel, "that we may get out of the witch's forest."
End of quote. When they had walked for 2 hours, they came to a great piece of water. "We cannot get over," said Hansel. "I see no foot, plank, and no bridge. And no boat crosses either," answered Gretel. "But a white duck is swimming there. If I ask her, she will help us over." Then she cried, little duck, dost thou see? Hansel and Gretel are waiting for thee. There's never a plank or bridge in sight. Take us across on thy back so white." The duck came to them, and Hansel seated himself on its back and told his sister to sit by him. "No," replied Gretel, "that will be too heavy for the little duck. She shall take us across, one after the other." The good little duck did so, and when they were once safely across and had walked for a short time, the forest seemed to be more and more familiar to them, and at length they saw from afar their father's house. Then they began to run, rushed into the parlour, and threw themselves into their father's arms. The man had not known one happy hour since he had left the children in the forest. The woman, however, was dead. Gretel emptied her pinafore until pearls and precious stones ran about the room, and Hansel threw one handful after another out of his pocket to add to them. Then all anxiety was at an end, and they lived together in perfect happiness. My tale is done. There runs a mouse. Whosoever catches it may make himself a big fur cap out of it. The juniper tree. It is now long ago, quite 2,000 years, since there was a rich man who had a beautiful and pious wife, and they loved each other dearly. They had, however, no children, though they wished for them very much, and the woman prayed for them day and night. but still they had none. Now there was a courtyard in front of their house in which was a juniper tree, and one day in winter the woman was standing beneath it, paring herself an apple, and while she was paring herself the apple, she cut her finger, and the blood fell on the snow. "Ah," said the woman, and sighed right heavily, and looked at the blood before her, and was most unhappy. "Ah, if I had but a child as red as blood and as white as snow." And while she thus spake, she became quite happy in her mind, and felt just as if that were going to happen. Then she went into the house, and a month went by, and the snow was gone, and 2 months, and then everything was green, and 3 months, and then all the flowers came out of the earth, and 4 months, and then all the trees in the wood grew thicker, and the green branches were all closely entwined, and the birds sang until the wood resounded, and the blossoms fell from the trees. Then the 5th month passed away, and she stood under the juniper tree, which smelt so sweetly that her heart leapt, and she fell on her knees, and was beside herself with joy. And when the 6th month was over, the fruit was large and fine, and then she was quite still, and the 7th month she snatched at the juniper berries and ate them greedily. Then she grew sick and sorrowful. Then the 8th month passed, and she called her husband to her, and wept and said, "If I die, then bury me beneath the juniper tree." Then she was quite comforted and happy until the next month was over, and then she had a child as white as snow and as red as blood, and when she beheld it, she was so delighted that she died. Then her husband buried her beneath the juniper tree, and he began to weep sore. After some time he was more at ease, and though he still wept, he could bear it, and after some time longer he took another wife. By the 2nd wife he had a daughter, but the 1st wife's child was a little son, and he was as red as blood and as white as snow. When the woman looked at her daughter, she loved her very much, but then she looked at the little boy, and it seemed to cut her to the heart, for the thought came into her mind that he would always stand in her way, and she was forever thinking how she could get all the fortune for her daughter, and the evil one filled her mind with this till she was quite wroth with the little boy, and slapped him here and cuffed him there, until the unhappy child was in continual terror, for when he came out of school he had no peace in any place. One day the woman had gone upstairs to her room, and her little daughter went up too, and said, "Mother, give me an apple." "Yes, my child," said the woman, and gave her a fine apple out of the chest, but the chest had a great heavy lid with a great sharp iron lock. "Mother," said the little daughter, "is brother not to have one too?" This made the woman angry, but she said, "Yes, when he comes out of school." And when she saw from the window that he was coming, it was just as if the devil entered into her, and she snatched at the apple and took it away again from her daughter, and said, "Thou shalt not have one before thy brother." Then she threw the apple into the chest and shut it. Then the little boy came in at the door, and the devil made her say to him kindly, "My son, wilt thou have an apple?" And she looked wickedly at him. "Mother," said the little boy, "how dreadful you look. Yes, give me an apple." Then it seemed to her as if she were forced to say to him, "Come with me." And she opened the lid of the chest and said, "Take out an apple for thyself." And while the little boy was stooping inside, the devil prompted her, and crash, she shut the lid down, and his head flew off and fell among the red apples. Then she was overwhelmed with terror, and thought, if I could but make them think that it was not done by me. So she went upstairs to her room, to her chest of drawers, and took a white handkerchief out of the top drawer, and set the head on the neck again, and folded the handkerchief so that nothing could be seen, and she set him on a chair in front of the door, and put the apple in his hand. After this, Marlinchen came into the kitchen to her mother, who was standing by the fire with a pan of hot water before her which she was constantly stirring round. "Mother," said Marlinchen, "brother is sitting at the door, and he looks quite white and has an apple in his hand. I asked him to give me the apple, but he did not answer me, and I was quite frightened." "Go back to him," said her mother, "and if he will not answer thee, give him a box on the ear." So Marlinchen went to him and said, "Brother, give me the apple." But he was silent, and she gave him a box on the ear, on which his head fell down. Marlinchen was terrified, and began crying and screaming, and ran to her mother, and said, "Alas, mother, I have knocked my brother's head off." And she wept and wept, and could not be comforted. "Marlinchen," said the mother, "what hast thou done? But be quiet and let no one know it. It cannot be helped now. We will make him into black puddings." Then the mother took the little boy and chopped him in pieces, put him into the pan and made him into black puddings. But Marlinchen stood by weeping and weeping, and all her tears fell into the pan, and there was no need of any salt. Then the father came home and sat down to dinner and said, "But where is my son?" And the mother served up a great dish of black puddings, and Marlinchen wept and could not leave off. Then the father again said, "But where is my son?" "Ah," said the mother, "he has gone across the country to his mother's great uncle. He will stay there a while." "And what is he going to do there? He did not even say goodbye to me." "Oh, he wanted to go and asked me if he might stay 6 weeks. He is well taken care of there." "Ah," said the man, "I feel so unhappy, lest all should not be right. He ought to have said goodbye to me." With that he began to eat, and said, "Marlinchen, why art thou crying? Thy brother will certainly come back." Then he said, "Ah, wife, how delicious this food is, give me some more." And the more he ate, the more he wanted to have. And he said, "Give me some more, you shall have none of it. It seems to me as if it were all mine." And he ate, and threw all the bones under the table, until he had finished the whole. But Marlinchen went away to her chest of drawers, and took her best silk handkerchief out of the bottom drawer, and got all the bones from beneath the table, and tied them up in her silk handkerchief, and carried them outside the door, weeping tears of blood. Then the juniper tree began to stir itself, and the branches parted asunder, and moved together again, just as if someone was rejoicing and clapping his hands. At the same time, a mist seemed to arise from the tree, and in the center of this mist it burned like a fire, and a beautiful bird flew out of the fire singing magnificently, and he flew high up in the air, and when he was gone, the juniper tree was just as it had been before, and the handkerchief with the bones was no longer there. Marlinchen, however, was as gay and happy as if her brother was still alive, and she went merrily into the house, and sat down to dinner, and ate. But the bird flew away, and lighted on a goldsmith's house, and began to sing, "My mother she killed me, my father he ate me, my sister, little Marlinchen, gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Kiwit, kiwit, what a beautiful bird am I." The goldsmith was sitting in his workshop making a gold chain, when he heard the bird which was sitting singing on his roof, and very beautiful the song seemed to him. He stood up, but as he crossed the threshold he lost one of his slippers. But he went away right up the middle of the street with one shoe on and one sock. He had his apron on, and in one hand he had the gold chain and in the other the pincers, and the sun was shining brightly on the street. Then he went right on and stood still, and said to the bird, "Bird," said he then, "how beautifully thou canst sing. Sing me that piece again." "No," said the bird, "I'll not sing it twice for nothing. Give me the golden chain, and then I will sing it again for thee." "There," said the goldsmith, "there is the golden chain for thee. Now sing me that song again." Then the bird came and took the golden chain in his right claw, and went and sat in front of the goldsmith, and sang, "My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, little Marlinchen, gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Kiwit, kiwit, what a beautiful bird am I." Oh, then the bird flew away to a shoemaker, and lighted on his roof and sang, "My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, little Marlinchen, gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Kiwit, kiwit, what a beautiful bird am I." The shoemaker heard that, and ran out of doors in his shirt sleeves, and looked up at his roof, and was forced to hold his hand before his eyes lest the sun should blind him. "Bird," said he, "how beautifully thou canst sing." Then he called in at his door, "Wife, just come outside. There is a bird. Look at that bird. He just can sing well." Then he called his daughter and children, and apprentices, boys and girls, and they all came up the street and looked at the bird and saw how beautiful he was. and what fine red and green feathers he had, and how like real gold his neck was, and how the eyes in his head shone like stars. "Bird," said the shoemaker, "now sing me that song again." "Nay," said the bird, "I do not sing twice for nothing. Thou must give me something." "Wife," said the man, "go to the garret. Upon the top shelf there stands a pair of red shoes. Bring them down." Then the wife went and brought the shoes. "There, bird," said the man, "now sing me that piece again." Then the bird came and took the shoes in his left claw and flew back on the roof and sang, "My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, little Marlinchen, gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Kiwit, Kiwit, what a beautiful bird am I." And when he had sung the whole, he flew away. In his right claw, he had the chain and the shoes in his left, and he flew far away to a mill, and the mill went clip-clap, 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 and in the mill sat 20 millers' men hewing a stone, and cutting, hick-hack, 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 and the mill went clip-clap, clip-clap, clip-clap. Then the bird went and sat on a lime tree which stood in front of the mill, and sang, "My mother, she killed me." Then one of them stopped working. "My father, he ate me." Oh, when then 2 more stopped working, and listened to that. "My sister, little Marlinchen." Then 4 more stopped, gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief. Now 8 only were hewing, laid them beneath. Now only 5, the juniper tree, and now only 1. Kiwit, Kiwit, what a beautiful bird am I. Then the last stopped also, and heard the last words. "Bird," said he, "how beautifully thou singest. Let me too hear that. Sing that once more for me." "Nay," said the bird, "I will not sing twice for nothing. Give me the millstone, and then I will sing it again." "Yes," said he, "if it belonged to me only, thou shouldst have it." "Yes," said the others, "if he sings again, he shall have it." Then the bird came down, and the 20 millers all set to work with a beam and raised the stone up, and the bird stuck his neck through the hole, and put the stone on as if it were a collar, and flew onto the tree again, and sang, "My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, little Marlinchen, gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Kiwit, Kiwit, what a beautiful bird am I." And when he had done singing, he spread his wings, and in his right claw he had the chain, and in his left the shoes, and round his neck the millstone, and he flew far away to his father's house. In the room sat the father, the mother, and Marlinchen at dinner, and the father said, "How light-hearted I feel, how happy I am." "Nay," said the mother, "I feel so uneasy, just as if a heavy storm were coming." Marlinchen, however, sat weeping and weeping, and then came the bird flying, and as it seated itself on the roof, the father said, "Ah, I feel so truly happy, and the sun is shining so beautifully outside. I feel just as if I were about to see some old friend again." "Nay," said the woman, "I feel so anxious, my teeth chatter, and I seem to have fire in my veins." And she tore her stays open, but Marlinchen sat in a corner crying, and held her plate before her eyes, and cried till it was quite wet. Then the bird sat on the juniper tree and sang, "My mother, she killed me." Then the mother stopped her ears, and shut her eyes, and would not see or hear, but there was a roaring in her ears like the most violent storm, and her eyes burnt and flashed like lightning. "My father, he ate me." "Ah, mother," says the man, "that is a beautiful bird. He sings so splendidly, and the sun shines so warm, and there is a smell just like cinnamon. My sister, little Marlinchen." Then Marlinchen laid her head on her knees and wept without ceasing, but the man said, "I am going out. I must see the bird quite close." "Oh, don't go," said the woman. "I feel as if the whole house were shaking and on fire." But the man went out and looked at the bird, gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. "Kiwit, Kiwit, what a beautiful bird am I." On this the bird let the golden chain fall, and it fell exactly round the man's neck, and so exactly round it that it fitted beautifully. Then he went in and said, "Just look what a fine bird that is, and what a handsome gold chain he has given me, and how pretty he is." But the woman was terrified, and fell down on the floor in the room, and her cap fell off her head. Then sang the bird once more, "My mother, she killed me. Would that I were 1,000 feet beneath the earth so as not to hear that. My father, he ate me." Then the woman fell down again as if dead. "My sister, little Marlinchen." "Ah," said Marlinchen, "I too will go out and see if the bird will give me anything." And she went out, gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief. Then he threw down the shoes to her, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Kiwit, kiwit, what a beautiful bird am I. Then she was light-hearted and joyous, and she put on the new red shoes, and danced and leaped into the house. "Ah," said she, "I was so sad when I went out, and now I am so light-hearted. That is a splendid bird. He has given me a pair of red shoes." "Well," said the woman, and sprang to her feet, and her hair stood up like flames of fire. "I feel as if the world were coming to an end. I too will go out and see if my heart feels lighter." And as she went out at the door, crash! The bird threw down the millstone on her head, and she was entirely crushed by it. The father and Marlinchen heard what had happened and went out, and smoke, flames, and fire were rising from the place. And when that was over, there stood the little brother, and he took his father and Marlinchen by the hand, and all three were right glad, and they went into the house to dinner, and ate